Yeah, well, it's just like the people in prison. They go there, they spend, say you go in prison when you're 18 and you come out when you're 50, you, you have difficulty trying to function in the society. Everything is different. Everything.
So the whole family came out here from Louisiana, came to San Francisco. You'd been in the military, so you'd probably already seen some stuff.
Oh yeah, I had been. I was promoted. I was able to use showers. I was elevated. But for the rest of the clan, you see, I got a chance to travel around before I came to California. But for my sisters, Lil and Lois, and even Lawrence, and Dad and Mom, that was quite a change. Not only from a physical standpoint, but from an economical standpoint. $7 a day to $7 an hour. You know, that was a big deal. Believe me.
That's more money than I made my first job.
I didn't start making $7 an hour until like 1997. 50 years after that. So you came out here. You ended up over. So they moved to a bigger apartment.
Yep.
Then what happened after that?
There I met my bride, Evelyn. She was living on Turk Street also in the next block. And I told you I was working at this machine shop while I was going to school. And Evelyn's brother, I had gotten a job in this machine shop where I was working. I saw him one day and he asked me, started talking. I told him I was working in this machine shop, and he asked me if they needed anybody. I said, I don't know, they probably always need somebody. Come on, I'll take you down there. I took him down there and the guy hired him. And so he was working there too. And then Evelyn came down there one day to bring something to him. I don't know. I guess it was a lunch or something. And I was floored. I was flabbergasted. This beautiful damsel, come walking in there. Who in the world is she? Of course, that's my sister. Wow, I'd like to meet her. Well, he felt kind of obligated to me, so he said, I got him a job. So he says, okay. So he introduced me to her, or introduced her to me. And we talked for a while, and then we started dating, and next thing you know, we got married. And in the meantime, I'm trying to go to school and work all this. So anyway, I got out of this machine shop business, and I went to work for the city janitorial service with the school department. Because the hours were more conducive, I could go to work at say 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, and as long as I had this area to take care of, they were having night school at Horace Mann, and I had to unlock and then lock the place back up, make sure it was clean and everything. And I did that for 4 or 5 years while I was going to school. And then after that, that's when I ended up in the shipyard, and everything else progressed from there. But that's how I met her.
So what was she, how old were you when you met her?
22, I guess.
How old was she?
19.
So you were working at the machine shop. What was she doing at that point?
She was working for Gallon Laundry. She was a checker. When they bring the stuff into the laundry. These things had to be identified. They clipped the identification on them. That's what she was doing.
So what was your, why don't you tell us about your first date?
The very first date we had was at the Golden Gate Theater. We went to a floor show. They used to have floor shows at the Golden Gate. They would last a week. The big name bands and so forth would come in. And Duke Ellington was playing at the Golden Gate. And I took her there to see Duke. And then after that, we had dinner at what was the name of that restaurant? It was a chain restaurant anyway. We had dinner, and then that was the first date.
So you came from Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
How long had she been here from Texas when you met?
Not very long, probably 3 months, I guess.
Who was more country?
Well, she came from the country. Yeah, she came from the country. And Baton Rouge was a far cry from the country. It was the capital of Louisiana, I'll have you know.
I think I may have heard this part before. No, it sounds familiar though. So you would say she was more country. I'm assuming that's what
Well,
you're
I mean,
alluding to.
you know, country, more country, you know, like more better, better, more better, country, more country. She wasn't exactly a square though, because she had been attending Mare Island College in Crockett, Texas, so she had some insight other than sweet potatoes or irish potatoes, you know. She had begun to come out of the woods.
So what was her her journey with her career? So as you were going through all these things, we talked about yours earlier. She was working at the laundry when you met her.
Yeah.
So what?
Yeah, and then we proceeded to have a family, and she stayed home and took care of the kids until about 1955, I guess. Then she went to school to become an LVN, a licensed vocational nurse. And then she went to work for the University of California. And she worked there until 1970 something. In 1974, I guess it was. 75. And no, it was after 75 because I had been to Egypt and came back. And I went there in 75, so it had to be around 78 because I retired in 79. So when I retired, she didn't think too much of working while I was in retirement. So she retired. And but she stayed at the University of California all those years.
So she get back up here. So why did she end up going back to work here then? What was the? Because our earliest recollections was she was working in the places around here. The place.
You know, that's because we were living here. See, we were living in San Francisco, and she was working at UC.
Right.
Now, when I retired in 79, she retired also. No, it was 78. Why I keep saying 79? 78. Because in 1979, the way we ended up with this house here was I was going to Seoul, Busan in South Korea to do a job for the South Korean government to install a system and train these Koreans how to operate it, how to service it. And I had a party line set up. We were to make a party line from Seoul, Korea to Los Angeles, which was the office where they had the contract, and then wherever I was at the time. And I was on my way to Tahoe, so I said, well, I'm not going to stay here until 9 o'clock. I'll get in the car and we'll start towards Tahoe. And whenever 9 o'clock comes, wherever I am, I'll stop and make the phone call. And I did. So I was stopped around here at Rayleigh's. And while I was on this party line talking to Los Angeles and South Korea, Evelyn and Diane was out wandering around. They saw some houses, for sale, and so they drifted off, got in the car, and they ended up driving around in this area. And they looked at the model houses. When they came back, I just had to go see them. I mean, I didn't have no choice. And they talked me into it. So anyway, make a long story short. Huh?
Is it 10 o'clock at night?
It's the morning.
No, this was in the morning.
Okay.
And so then we went on to Tahoe after that, after I looked at the houses. And I put my name on the list. At that time, you had to put your name on the list before they would. And then they would announce a new opening of a new phase. And then you would come in and put your down payment, And that's what happened. I was supposed to get this house next door, but the lady got in there before I did, Mrs. Davis. And so this was the next one, so I just took this one. And so then when we moved up here, Evelyn went to work at the nursing home down there on Travis. So that's how she ended up working down there.
So you moved into this house in Fairfield in 1979?
December the 20th,
December
1979. It was raining like crazy. That's the year I think it rained more than... It was flooding out there right a block away.
Was that the year that you lost your boot in the backyard?
Yeah. Yeah, stepped off in the mud. And boot is still there too, isn't it?
Underneath the deck.
Yeah.
So how many kids did you want to have?
Well, that was.
You want me to ask her to leave before
I didn't plan. I didn't plan on having any, but it was a circumstantial situation. I ended up with 4. 2 boys and 2 girls. And Jackie, Glenn, Diane.
No, Michael.
Oh, Michael? What did I say?
You said
Diane.
Oh, Glenn. Glenn, Jackie, Glenn, Michael, and Diane. That's the way it went. Then I decided that was enough.
So after you had Jackie and Glenn, there's a powerful urge once you have the nuclear family at that point to let that be it. But
Yeah, well, I was so busy, I wasn't really concentrating on that. That was the whole thing. I was just busy. I mean, I was going to school and working and doing all kinds of crazy things, and half the time, at that time when I went to, I had gone to work at Hunters Point, and I was they were sending me from one school to another. I mean, before I finished one, I had to go to another. So that's why I didn't go on and get my degree, was because my equivalency is a BS. You see, but because I was going around the country to different schools, the government was paying for it. So, I mean, I was busy. I was fooling around. So I hadn't thought about family size and all of that. In fact, when I look at it, a family of four with 4 kids was not an astronomical number of kids, because my mother had 4 kids, my brother had 4 kids, Leola had 2, and Lois had 2, and I had 4. So I was with the What's Happening Now crowd.
So what kind of, I mean, so you're traveling so much. What kind of father were you?
Not very much. I stayed gone most of the time, but I was a good father. I'll let Jackie answer that.
Oh, don't.
I'll tell you what.
I more or less looked to my mother most of my time, because he was gone.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. They traveled more than most kids did at that time. I mean, when I was home on the weekend, there was nothing to jump in the car and go to Los Angeles, have a hamburger and come back, go to Disneyland, you know. Went up to Seattle, the World Fair, you know. And we used to go down to Alum Rock, down to San Jose. Oh, we got around.
We even went to Baton Rouge once.
Yeah, even went to Baton Rouge once.
Yeah, and then I remember going to the theater, and we walked in and we went to sit downstairs, and they said we didn't go downstairs because we were black. We had to go sit-ups. I remember that. That was very difficult, because in San Francisco there was none of that. We didn't have the prejudice factor, so that was still.
So one of the questions I always have, Grandpa, is you lived in the absolute, or so if you lived in Louisiana, you were living in, you know, the
Deep
the
South.
middle. Yeah, if I'm looking at a map, I don't think it gets any deeper than that.
That's right.
It's the deepest of the deep South.
That's right.
But yet, I remember as being a grandkid living in this house and talking to you and Grandma and stuff like that. I never heard a single word about anything having to do with segregation, racism, nothing.
Well,
I mean, not a peep from my perspective.
Well, probably because we were an upward mobility family. We were going places and doing things. You see, when I was traveling around, I wasn't going around as a second-class citizen. I mean, just like you see him travel now, he's going to the best of hotels. He's eating the best of foods in the best restaurants. Got to rent a car wherever you go. Got a credit card, you know, wherever you go. Nobody lived in better. And when I went, I was usually in charge of that particular phase of the work that I was doing. And so I didn't have any reason to have a submissive attitude. If anything, I probably had an inflated attitude. I was egotistical. I'd be the first to admit it. But that's the way you make your way. You don't back up in a corner and say, oh, well, this person is this or this person is that, and I can't go into here, I can't do that. I went down to Pascagoula, Mississippi, which is right next to Louisiana. And I went down there. There was a shipyard down there, and they were building LSTs. That was the first ships they had that they had helicopters on. And I flew into Mobile. They had a Navy command car there waiting for me when I got to Mobile, and they drove me to Pascagoula, Mississippi. They took me to the Hyatt House, which is the same thing as going to the Sir Francis Drake in San Francisco or the Mark Hopkins. You know, I mean, this is no fly-by-night outfit, you know. And I went in there, and it was hot that day, and I picked up the telephone, and I called the desk, and I said, do you have a bar in here? I'm burning up. The lady said, oh, yes, we have a bar. And what room are you in? And I told her, she says, oh, yeah, you go down this way and that way. As a matter of fact, I'll send someone to get you. I said, okay. So they said, and let's go down and pick me up and take me to this bar inside of this fancy hotel. And I sat there and was having this beer, and I was talking to this waitress. The bartender was a tender, not a waitress, it was a bartender. And we were having a good conversation going. Pretty soon, a white dude came in there with his great big hat on, britches hanging off, half off his rear end, you know. And he walked in there and he sat down there, and she said, you gonna have the usual? And he said, yeah. So she gave it to him. And she came back on and started talking to me. He says, well, what's he doing in here? And she said, he's a customer. He said, a customer? He can't be a customer. He's black. He don't have no business. He's a Negro is what he said. He don't have no business in here. And she said, well, you know, now this lady I had found out had spent about 7 years in Alameda. Her husband was in the Navy. And she went back to Mississippi after when he got out of service. And she said, you know, so this is exactly the reason why we're so poor down here now. It's because of people like you. There's nobody paying any attention to what you're talking about. He said, well, if he's going to stay here, I'm not going to stay here. She says, you got that right. She says, in fact, I want you to leave right now. And he said, oh, you don't talk to me that way. And she pressed the button. Here come a great big bouncer, about twice your size, Glenn. Grabbed that guy by the arm and took him out there and told him, don't show up there again. And I sat there and finished my beer. Other people came in, got the beer, and didn't say nothing. They completely ignored me as though I wasn't there. And I ignored them as though they weren't there. Okay? So, you see, I had no reason to have an inferiority complex. I was in Lexington, Virginia. Evelyn and I, we went on a vacation, went back to New York, went to Detroit, and on the way back, the crankshaft broke in the car. I had a Wildcat Buick, and the crankshaft